Well, thank you for that. If you do remember as we move through the agenda, if there is an item that you forgot to declare, it's never too late. Please let us know if you do remember. And even if you just want to check. I'm going to take you to page 4, which is our minute. Welcome, Alan. Sorry, I totally ignored you online. Can you hear us? All good?
Yeah, the reception's not very good today. The video's hard to see and the sound is a little bit patchy, but I can hear you.
Good. So this is a reminder to everyone. Outside voices, please do not mumble. Look to the centre of the room and speak properly. Otherwise, Alan is not going to hear us, and we don't want that. So Alan, please shout out if there's definitely interruptions, because we do have very hard rain here as well, so there might be some atmospheric interruptions, but we will try and speak up as best as we can.
It's fine. I don't mind not seeing you, but not hearing you is a bit difficult.
Yes, I can just imagine. Okay, we go to page 4, which is our minutes from the last meeting, and this has been emailed out by Dee a long time ago. Any questions or queries? Is this a true representation of what was discussed? Moved by Councillor Foster, seconded by Councillor Parata. All in favour? Contrary? Carried. Okay, so then we have our governance work plan on page 13. So councillors, today we have 2 discussion papers. We're going to do our first one, which was a very, very interesting read, giving us an update where we're at, what we are doing, what our restraints are, what our risks are. So thank you to the team who put that paper together. It was a very good read. I'm going to take everyone to page 14, and that is our forestry update. And who is going to? Ariel, are you? Yannick. Please come and take the hot seat, Yannick. And you can give us an introduction, and then we will talk through all the options and then have a discussion and make a decision. And thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good morning, all. Nice, good to see you. Busy year. Forestry plan change and regulation. It's been 2 years of evolution, I suppose. It's a good starting point. And we all remember where this came from, cyclones, hail and Gabrielle, and the Milu report. Our first year was reasonably organic, and I think it's fair to point that out, where we were beginning to develop an understanding of where we needed to go from a regulatory perspective in light and context of the response and recovery in the Milu report. We focused on building an understanding of the problems and the options available to us. And consultant Lois Easton provided an issues and options report around about May and had a workshop with the council to progress our thinking, and then we engaged with the forestry sector on that, which was an interesting conversation in itself. Towards the end of that first year, we began to develop a program plan, and that program plan identified 2 bits of work, a fast bit and a slow bit. And the fast bit was really focused on targeting the really high risk aspects of forestry, harvests and earthworks related. So it was fairly surgical, it was fairly discreet, and was meant to be agile and move quickly. And the second part was really everything else. That everything else really focused firstly on the spatial component of managing risk across our region. And to that end, we benefited from the good work of Land Care Research. They developed what's called a morphometric connectivity model, which identifies 2 probabilities. As you know, we've brought this to the table before. One probability being the probability of shallow landslides occurring, and the second probability being the likelihood of those landslides finding their way into waterways. So it's a very powerful model. and it gave us a very good foundation to map risk to our receiving environments across the whole region. And that formed the basis of identifying what we've called Land Overlay 3B and all the transition work that's come about. And the second part was really the delivery mechanism. And the delivery mechanism was really what we were calling at the time farm and forestry plans, but we've evolved that. So it's more about requiring landowners to develop sustainable land use plans which identified risks on a block-by-block basis and mitigations to deal with those risks. The idea being, if we could aggregate all of those plans in a catchment context, then we would have an all-of-catchment approach to dealing with land instability issues. So, just to recap, two parts to the program, the harvest and earthworks part, and then the spatial planning and farm planning component. The second year was really about developing the evidence base for both, and I guess it's fair to say that the first plan change has met headwinds in terms of legislative uncertainty, largely around the changes that the government has proposed to make to the National Environmental Standards for Commercial Forestry, which is still up in the air, by the way, as well as the moratorium that it's imposed on notifying freshwater plans. So we've got two key headwinds here that are affecting the way in which we're able to progress our first plan change around forestry harvest. So what's ended up happening is the fast bit is not as fast as what we intended, and the slow bit's actually catching up. And so we've had to pivot in order to deal with these uncertainties. And so what we've come up with is three options for consideration at this table. The first option is to go quickly, is to progress. We know that the current NES still allows for stringency, so we are able to introduce more stringent provisions than the National Environmental Standards, but there are risks associated with that. We know that the government is intending to make those changes. We do want to keep in step with what those amendments might look like. We do want to work closely with the forestry sector. We do want to see alignment, but at the same time, we're mindful of the risk that potentially that door will close. So that's the first option. The second option is to wait for the government to signal those changes to the National Environmental Standards, in particular Regulation 618, which relates to our ability to introduce more stringent provisions. And once we have that certainty, if we have the green light, if the door is open, then we progress as planned. And what progress looks like is to have a window of engagement with the forestry sector, with Tairāwhiti whenua, to finesse, refine our plan change proposal, and then to seek approval to publicly notify. The third option is, I guess, a combination. It basically recognises that the first fast plan change is now slightly slower than we anticipated, and is beginning to integrate quite positively with the second plan change, and actually with the wider TRMP review, and that includes the regional policy statement. So we are beginning to see some greater integration across the TRMP as well, which is a positive thing. And so there's some benefits there to say, well, actually, while we had two plan changes in motion, there is a benefit in bringing them together and to integrate them so we get a fully integrated and holistic package, and then moving towards notifying the first and second plan change with the freshwater planning package as a whole. And that provides probably the best outcome in terms of policy. But what that means, probably a slightly slower pathway as well, as the second plan change catches up with the first. So three options. The don't wait, just go. Second one being wait for the signal from the government and the door to be open so we can progress the first plan change separately and then do everything else later. And the third option being combine it all, wait for the government, and go slow down. And it's for this table to consider, Your Worship, the veracity of those options, so we can take it.
Thank you for that, Yannick. I am going to open the floor. Everyone has had the opportunity to read the paper, which, like I said, is made for very good reading. I think it doesn't matter what we decide today, there's not one right option. Every option has got some advantages and some risks. So at the end of the day, it's for us to then decide which one sits well with what we can do, with what the temperature is, with the speed that the government is moving with, and also the message we want to send to our community. So I think we need to tie all three of those together and then decide which option is best for us. But I'm going to open the floor and listen to some opinions and or questions. So councillors Alan and Sarah, the floor is open. Go Sarah, thank you. Thank you, hot ticket.
Thanks Yannick, and appreciate the clarity with which you've described the work to date and how it fits with other pieces of work. So Alan and I have looked at the forestry plan change itself and the section 32, coming along very well, but I prefer option 3 for the reason that it gives everybody a better understanding of the approach across the planning documents. Importantly, it also, when described clearly, will set out what's not working, and if you do need more stringent provisions, why that's justified. And I think in terms of the section 32, it will give a much better story. And honestly, it's not about just ticking a legal box. You've got to have the full story in really clear language you've just used. And that takes your community with you as well. Alan might want to chip in, seeing as we both reviewed the work, but yeah, option
hand up.
me.
Awesome. I can see your Bart Simpson hand up, Alan. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship, and yes, thank you, Yannick. That's a really good report, very clear, and set the options out very well. And I think what it does, as Sarah picked up, it highlights a couple of the issues we had with the draft forestry plan change. Yannick, I was just wanting to question 2 and 3. I'm picking neither of them means work stops. Basically, both options, work continues. If we select option 3, which I think probably is the better one, work, my understanding is work just continues. If the government does open the door for option 2, then we've got the ability to look at that option and decide, given the time and where things are at, whether we do pick up option 2 and progress a separate plan change, knowing that the other material is close by. So is that my understanding correct?
Through you, Your Worship, that's correct, sir. That gives us some options, I guess, as we move forward. But in terms of managing risk, my perspective is that it's probably the safer pathway to take.
I concur. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Wharehinga, and then Councillor Foster, and then Councillor Alder.
Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Speak up.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'm in favour of option 3 as well. I mean, it has logical fit in terms of alignment of plans. I think that there needs to be a strong comms piece though, because one of the biggest community frustrations is our delay in changing our plans. And I worry that Yannick you and the team have made a compelling case to me in regards to supporting option 3 around plan alignment, combining them, all of those kinds of things. Makes perfect sense. My concern and a risk that I'd also like to put out there is that often those who want to slow down the change will use our justification in order to justify their slowdown of the change. You know, oh, we're trying to help council out. Like, I mean, it makes alignment sense later on. Those are our reasons, not their reasons, which is why I feel like we need to be making sure that we're having a strong conversation in the community that, hey, if we could, we would speed up these plan changes if we could, but it makes logical sense right now in order to align these. We don't want to be wasting more staff resource and time and money and things like that, or maybe chasing something that's could possibly change later on and we're waiting for national direction. Again, all of that stuff makes perfect sense to me. I completely agree with those things. There's just that other kind of side added piece where we end up as a council being left to hold that, I guess, stagnation in what's already been a community that's had stagnant plans, and we agree on the state of our plans at the moment for a long time. So yeah, I agree with the way forward. With elected hat on, as a person on this committee, agree with the way forward. With my elected hat on, frustrated on behalf of the community that it's now another way to engage.
Okay. We'll just move past that line. Councillor Parata, you.
I can't tell from the readings what is it that industry in Tairāwhiti want? Do we know what it is they want? Not the East Lynwood Council. Do we know what the industry itself wants?
Through you, Your Worship, I mean, I wouldn't want to speak on behalf of the industry, but what we've heard is obviously that they have an economic model that they need to run to, and there are some challenges to the industry in terms of the export market. What they want, I suppose, is the ability to do their work without being unduly constrained. And obviously, what we're operating in is a national standard. That's what we have to work with. So the government is also interested in trying to make things as simple as possible, while recognising that there's a need to manage environmental effects. That's the tension, I suppose, where our role is to manage the effects and to ensure that the environment is protected. The industry probably have a slightly different take on what that might look and feel like.
Yeah.
And it just becomes a tension space.
And so that's kind of my point really, or
No, you go.
that is the point of my question, is that my understanding is at the moment it is already difficult in the industry to carry on. It's almost becoming untenable to keep doing it. So what I'm asking is are we working together to try and find a way forward that protects the environment, that ensures that we're doing our job as regulators and they can continue to do their job, which is production forestry? Is there harmony in the way that we're trying to move?
Ask Nadine to answer that, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Madam CDO.
Through your worship, so the short answer to that is yes. We are working with industry on a more proactive environmental protection approach, I guess. What we heard, because we met with Forestry week before last, and had a session with the chief executive and their nominated representatives, not the Eastern Wood Council, but more generally. What was clear is that they're working in uncertain times, so they know that there's going to be further changes to the national standards, whether or not the minister will provide the ability for us to be able to have particular rules relevant to our unique circumstances. It's a question mark. The timing around this plan change is a question mark for them, so they're seeking certainty and clarity in a really uncertain time around how they can plan and operate going forward. So that's kind of the plan change. In the more proactive space, they are working with us on the business case for our transition work. So felt it was quite a productive meeting. Where they've agreed to share some information with us, probably some non-disclosure agreements that will be put in place. Some of this will be commercially sensitive to feed into the business case model. So that's to help us, or help them also kind of transition into a more sustainable planting regime. But yeah, I think it's fair to say that they're pretty much wanting the same outcomes in terms of the really good environment to operate in. It's just providing some critical clarity points for them.
And I'll just have one more supplementary question. I don't know how to say it.
Just say it.
What are the risks to Māori by either rushing forward and doing the work or delaying? Well, I couldn't understand that from the treaty analysis. I couldn't understand what the risk was to Māori. And in particular, I'm thinking of Māori, which makes up so much of the land here in Te Tairāwhiti. So it's not that I'm trying to be racial, it's that I'm trying to be practical in the fact that this will affect Māori land more than anyone else. So,
Fair question.
Through you, Your Worship. I suppose that speaks to the Chief Executive's point around the bigger conversation, the risks to Māori, I suppose, in terms of what the future might look like with regards to forestry, and it's a quickly evolving space, and that creates question marks for everyone. What we are trying to do is cultivate a conversation right across our communities around the future and what change might look like, in order at least to include everyone in the corridor to inform what our response might be. And so we get the timing right. That conversation will occur once we find clarity from the government around whether we have a pathway forwards. But it's, I can't answer your question directly, but my approach has always been to ensure the engagement is there in order to understand the perspectives from even halfway through.
I just have one more supplementary question.
No, that's all good. There's no rush.
And I don't know who I'm asking this question of, but I understand that we have an obligation to ensure that we follow, the national guidelines set by central government and not local government. But as we develop our own work, does that become our primary focus? What it is that central government want, or is our primary focus what it is that our own people in our own region and our own constituents want and need? And if there is disharmony between what central government is telling us that they need us to do and what our people want us and need us to do, what then?
Through your worship, that is that's really the crux of the matter when it comes to a lot of matters, and particularly resource management, where we're getting more and more national direction that's very...
It's not optional.
It's not optional.
Yeah.
So we
We
cannot...
need to make it work within the guidelines and the rules they set nationally, and then our instruments need to reflect what those national instruments are.
But I would say then, as a council, you have... maybe you can think about different roles you play. Maybe it's more about other ways to incentivise change to get the outcomes that your community wants. It may not be through a regulatory process and an RMA process, but you look to other ways to incentivise change. And I think that will be what a lot of councils need to think about as the current RM reform makes its way through the system, because that's going to create a much more permissive framework as of right, a lot less consenting, a lot less involvement day to day in decision making. So you'll need to maybe think about how else you incentivise the change that your communities want to see.
How else you can do it without the regulatory?
Yeah, and working with other partners.
Okay, thank you so much for that.
Mr. Larry Foster.
Thank you. I'm reading through it. It's a really good report, actually. Thank you. so much. And I think moving through option 3 does seem to be the most sensible way to go at this stage, combining everything, and just waiting for national direction as well. And we did that visit a while back out to the Tairāwhiti, and we saw firsthand how forestry has evolved and how they are actually really, after one rotation, realising, hey, we can't replant in these areas again, we need to revert, and how they do that. That was really interesting, actually. And, you could feel the passion from the foresters of wanting to do it right and wanting to make sure that the environment didn't suffer, the waterways were clear. So that was really pleasing to hear that. And all the stuff that we're doing at the TRMP is all about the environmental effects and everything like that, but really the major concern for this community is the transition of farms and wood farms into forestry. And there's nothing in here that signifies how we may be able to restrict or control that, because we've just seen already how many farms have gone this year and over the last year or so, and great flat farming land that should be production into food, not forests. So is there anything in the TRMP that we can have some control over blanket forestry on prime farmland? Is there anything, or is that national direction?
So, through you, Your Worship, at the moment the NESCF does allow councils to consider putting in place rules that control afforestation. I believe central government has signalled quite strongly that they want to change that. So potentially you could consider directing staff to look at whether it be through zoning or an overlay controlling afforestation on, not talking about the steep land, but the class 1, 2 and 3. So it is an option. It's not currently the focus of the work stream. The work stream's been about managing the more immediate effects that we've been seeing.
While we're doing the whole forestry plan, it'd be nice to embrace everything. At the end of the day, you could just, you could say there's no forestry foundation on A and B,
So yeah, at the moment it's possible. We've had the clear signal that that will change. So we are waiting to see if we will get some consultation.
Whoever's phone is on, please turn it down. It's the 3rd time it has gone. It's driving everyone nuts, especially myself. Thank you, Joe.
Yes, so we think some consultation on national direction is coming up within the next couple of months. Yep. So we might receive a little bit more clarity at that point.
Yeah, thanks. I have to agree with Larry on that one, that is a serious priority for this region. We have a limited area of farmable land that returns our region a really solid income, and tying it up in forestry for the long term is just not ideal. So that should be prioritised right alongside the Overlay 3B, I believe. So yeah, reading through these, we are in a hurry to solve this problem, and that's where option 1 leaps out at you. Let's try and get something done quickly. But the recently, and I think it's been already answered, but more concisely put, perhaps, the recently updated standard consent conditions. Do these updated conditions mitigate the need for the hurry in going down option 1 path? And do they put in place sufficient environmental protection while allowing the forestry companies to continue the important task? That's the question.
Through you, Your Worship. The consent conditions are an interim measure to manage the effects while the regulatory space evolves. They're not a solvable, and they're not going to replace the need for regulation. But they are better than nothing while we develop the policy to put into place a more comprehensive picture of the risk and and what we're trying to manage. So it's better than nothing, but it certainly doesn't negate the need for that regulatory response. And the speed is what it is. We move as quickly as we can within the political, the legislative context that we find ourselves in. So it is what it is.
Thank you.
Any more questions or queries? Alan, anything else you need? All good? Sarah, all good? So it seems to me we have come to what is the recommendation here today, where we keep an eye on what the government is doing. My expectation or my understanding is that the NESCF stuff will come out next month. So we might have some guidance or indications of what is being planned or how it goes. But that's good for us because then we give more guidance and more clearance on how we go forward and what pace we work and when and what we notify when. Because at this stage there is no clarity for us. So let's go to page 15, councillors. Councillor Cranston, did you want to make any comment?
No, I'm fine. I'm just here to listen, really.
Good.
Not on the committee.
Oh, good. You're welcome to say something if you wanted to.
Thank you.
Okay, so what we're saying is we'll note the contents of this report, approve combining our work streams in the Forestry Plan Change Programme to ensure work on resilient land use continues while Council waits for further clarity in respect of changes to the NESCF. I'm happy to move that. Seconded by Councillor Wharehinga. Any more questions or queries?
Sorry, just 1 second.
Yes. So we're going with option 3, which is the combination.
Sorry, I'm reading slowly.
It's all good. There's no rush. Absolutely no rush.
This is we're going to wait
Yes. For more guidance
more
from
information,
the
and then
NES.
when we have more information, can we make a different decision? If it comes back?
Always make a different decision. For now,
One thing you will have noticed
now,
about this
wait.
program, we
for now,
adapt.
what we are saying, it makes sense for us not to stream ahead in a direction which we might be doing work, and then when the government comes out with their guidance, we might have progressed here, but then they're saying, oh, you need to pivot this way. So what we are saying is we're working in the direction we suspect we should be, but once they give us more clarity, we can then steam ahead in the direction which they set. Make sense?
That's correct, Your Worship. We can take stock once the government comes down.
But coming back to your question, absolutely. Every 6 weeks when we do have a sustainable or a TRMP committee or whatever committee we do have the opportunity to, I'm not saying there's going to be a report coming to us in 6 weeks saying, let's reverse what we said.
No,
but it's not, this is not tying you down forever. Hopefully, as we get more information, we then can move faster in an agreed direction. Kapai?
Yes.
All in favour? Contrary? Carried. Thank you.
Can I ask a question just alongside that? What are our next steps in progressing the controlling of where time to be planted for free land?
In terms of good farmland,
Yeah, so what's our next step to try and control that situation?
we'll probably have to wait and see what comes out of the government, the beehive, in terms of whether we'll have any control over that particular aspect.
There's nothing we can do as a council in parallel and stick our necks out.
Well, I would suggest that we wait.
Through your worship, I mean, we could start doing, I guess, a bit of a problem definition. What is the size of the problem? But that in itself would probably take a couple of months to work through, and by then we would know what the legislation says anyway.
Thank you.
Councillor Foster.
At the end of the day, you know, you've got to look at the region and think what is the maximum forestry that this region can handle or needs to handle for the future, because already at the moment the demand for finished product is, so vulnerable. And so, if we just say we have got no control and the whole place, all our beautiful farmland, everything like was all just planted on pine, here we would be in 30 years' time with no food production, no loss of labour, loss of a huge industry for the region. So, we've got to be really careful that we don't put out a welcome all planting policy for the region, because wherever you go, you're just seeing new pines being planted everywhere at the moment. It's kind of quite scary, particularly when we've had, the industry has been so vulnerable. I mean, the prices we're so reliant on one market, and there hasn't been much diversification. We're getting new product on, which is good, wood pellets and some other off products with it, which is great. But at the end of the day, how much is too much? Got to put it out there.
The nervous laughter makes me concerned. Thanks for that question, Councillor. We share your concerns. It is a complex issue. It's a wicked problem with so many facets that influence other areas and industry and economics and environment. So it is complex.
Reviewing all of this work, I always come back to the fact that we've travelled over about 140 years post clearance of forest, and since that moment in time, we've been trying to get the cat back in the box. Our approach has to be spatial in nature, which is to identify the high-risk areas, say that has to go back into some form of permanent vegetation, and that's the pathway we're on at the moment. That's a very powerful approach. We can apply the same understanding and approach to risk for the rest of the region as well. I believe that will move us towards a far more optimised approach for land use management. And I think that kind of falls in step with the government's expectations as well, to front load the planning by saying what should go where. And perhaps as we progress, we can pick up some of those concerns and comments and begin to look at what that looks like outside what we're nominally calling Land Overlay 3B. But as a starting point, that transition space is a very, very constructive space that we're operating in.
I totally agree with native reversion in those areas for sure. It's just the plantation, pine trees, carbon farming, the whole thing is just got a little bit at the moment, people can plant pines for carbon farming, and that's been another incentive. They've got the option of production or carbon, and there's no kind of definition saying, hey, if you're going to have a carbon farm, no production. So it's just encouraging everyone to grow something as fast as possible, which is pine, and it's not necessarily the right way to attack things.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Hey, I just want to bring something up, and forgive me if I'm wrong in regards to this question, but it's my recollection that we brought all of these concerns up to government, right, to this new government in regards to the delay on our plans, the change of planting, our specific regional focus, the things that we want in terms of being able to preserve farmland, in terms of the focus on planting, all of that kind of stuff. We've sent that message to this government, right? They have all of that stuff, yeah.
Articulated
it's a position that we've articulated often, so it shouldn't be a surprise to us that, yes, we're still feeling this way, and the government is still putting their brakes on some things because they have their own priorities. That's just, we've said this multiple times. This is the situation that we're in, and this is the rub between local government and central government. So they just need to make sure that we're speaking to that as well.
I just want to say, this is quite a loosey-goosey discussion. Like I said earlier, I have a massive headache, so I will just loosey-goosey. Right. So let's move to a real agenda item now.
Thank you.
Before we get too loosey-goosey. Thank you, Yannick. Oh, it's not time for coffee yet. We will go to page 51, councillors, which is our regional policy statement, early engagement summary.
Thank you. I will talk to this, but I did want to just invite Kelsey up to the front just so you see who Kelsey is. So this is Kelsey Goldsmith,
Welcome,
policy
Kelsey.
planner working on the Tairāwhiti Resource Management Plan review and who has compiled this report for us. It is a snapshot of the feedback we received on the early engagement on the direction of travel of the regional policy statement provisions. You'll see in attachment 1 outlines the questions that were asked. Not a huge amount of feedback, but we did also get some additional written feedback from some key people like Eastland Group and Federated Farmers, and the team is busy sort of trying to incorporate as much of that feedback as they can within the draft regional policy statement provisions. So there were some areas where there was sort of clear support for the direction of travel, and then other areas where it's a bit more maybe not sure. So a good sense check. And now the team is continuing to incorporate that feedback, and there will be, the intention as always was to actually consult on the full set of draft provisions as well. This was just an early engagement to test the waters. One thing to note was one of the key pieces of feedback we've received from some of our iwi partners is a bit of uncertainty about whether the Kiuta-Ki-Tai approach is preferred, the mountains to sea approach for the overarching framework of the regional policy statement, or Te Oranga or Te Kaiao. So putting the environment at the well-being, the health of the environment sort of as the precursor to any decision-making resource management framework. So that's something that we're just continuing to work through. I don't think they're a million miles apart, but it's a different way of looking at how we manage the natural and built environment. So any questions really, or things arising from what you've read that you want to dig into, explore, direct the team to take a closer look at?
Alan.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you, Joe, for raising that particular matter, because that was really just the one matter I wanted to delve into a little bit, because the report didn't really cover it. And I was sort of struggling to work out what really are the fundamental differences between the two approaches. Both have a environmental integrated approach, not separating the mountains from the flats, from the sea, from the water, from the air sort of thing. And I was just, are the groups able to sort of articulate really what that fundamental difference is, and have you really thought what that would mean to the regional policy statement direction as to where it's going? I've indicated maybe it's just in one part of the regional policy statement that overriding approach needs to be set out. I just welcome some thoughts on that. Thank you.
Through you, Your Worship, we are still working through with our iwi technicians as they are naming themselves on what that approach should mean for the regional policy statement. From what I understand from discussions that we've had and my readings, it's really about whether we very clearly in the regional policy statement put Te Kaiao and its needs first. A bit like Te Mana o Te Wai, but a wider approach to the whole of the whenua, the waterways, the environment. And that by definition would need an integrated approach anyway. And the extent to which I suppose we do or don't provide for activities that could have an impact on Te Tairāwhiti, what are those exemptions, what are those carve-outs that we as a region recognise that we need to provide for and support, even though there may be some impact on Te Tairāwhiti, in order to support people's well-being and health?
I also not necessarily had questions, but I think it's awesome that we're engaging deeply with Te Tainga Mahaki in a Wānanga space too around this kaupapa. That's actually really what I'd hoped from our last hui, and it's so good to see that it's moving from what we consider consultation more into Wānanga, so that's also big steps. And also acknowledge that right now it's Ki Kitai, and the other iwi and other hapu will need to buy into that. I think it's a really good first step. The other thing I just wanted to note is that this page 63.70, the minimum requirement under RMA is to consult with iwi authorities when preparing the draft plan provisions. Council has determined that this will be insufficient in meeting the needs of our treaty partners. The preferred approach to engagement is to co-draft and review the draft RPS provisions in partnership with tangata whenua. And while the rest of the country cannot fathom how that would possibly be a way forward, the Gisborne District Council says that's something that we do here. So, like, we should be proud. We should be proud. We should be proud. While the rest of the country is struggling to think about how will we work together going forward, the Gisborne District Council says above and beyond the requirements of the RPS or the RMA, here we are doing it anyway. So I just want to acknowledge us for doing it, continuing to do it, and even though it's difficult and it's challenging to do so, but that if we continue to maintain this attitude to engagement and finding ways to work together, particularly when we stop using words like engagement and we start using words like wānanga, that changes the attitude and probably will change the engagement going forward. So I don't have any other feedback except to acknowledge that I can see growth here. Oh, and also just note that I've read the feedback that people have provided, and it seems for the most part that there is support, but ultimately what our people want is balance. They want balance in decision making, they want balanced decision making, they want to be able to see economic development and see activities and protect. So going forward, I think it's the job of the council to think about how we create that balance. There is an impact, there'll always be an impact, but how do we offset? Because that's what our people want. I just wanted to note that. Otherwise, I'm pretty happy with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Carrying on a bit from Councillor Parata's comments, and referring to question 5, protecting the environment should be the primary goal when making decisions. And strongly agree. And I do agree with that, but in balance, you've got to realise that mankind forever, and women as well, have always modified our environment.
Thank you for that, Colin.
You know, that's what man does, is modify your environment. And we want to make sure that we don't over-legislate in protecting the environment and destroying some person's livelihood. And, you know, there's a few cases out there at the moment where, you know, no, you're on a floodplain and it's forever going to be a floodplain, it always was. And to write that area off forever and let nature win is not necessarily the right thing to do.
In your opinion?
Well, it's not necessarily the right thing to do. It's not always the right thing to do. Yeah, that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other questions or queries just showing good engagement, like Councillor Parata said, trying to reach out above and beyond? Sarah.
Thank you, Your Worship. I know the report is around engagement and responses on the RPS, but I couldn't help notice the report also sets out, you know, the national direction changes that are coming. I've previously flagged, I think it would be helpful to have some sort of tracking of national direction policies and how they are influencing the RTS. So even just a table setting out this national direction policy flows through these provisions, and it will just make it a lot easier when when national direction changes to go through and efficiently.
We can absolutely do that. I'm just thinking about where that will sit, whether it's an agenda item or something we provide for you. But we will work through that and figure out the best way to get the information to you, because obviously the team are keeping track of all of that and need to, especially with changes on the horizon.
Wow. Any other questions or queries? This is just a noting.
If not, I'll move.
Moved by Councillor Parata, seconded by Councillor Foster. All in favour? Aye. Talking about changes, Joe. Today is Joe's last day with us. We are sad as, but we are very, very excited that you are able to join your husband and your two lovely kids in the UK, also moving closer to whānau and friends. So I just wanted to take this opportunity on behalf of all councillors to say thank you. Thank you for tolerating us. Thank you for always being very kind and calm. Poor Jo. I go around that corner and she is happily working away, and then I can just, hello Jo, I just need to ask you this. Oh, what about this? Help me with this. And always ready to either point me in the right direction or saying to me, don't you worry, I'll flick you an email with the information you need. So I know I speak on behalf of all councillors today where I say, bon voyage, have the best time ever. You deserve a wonderful time close to your family. It is our loss, their win. And hopefully we will see you again. Hopefully we will be able to catch up again. If not, know that we will always think fondly of the time we worked together. And I have got a tiny little gift. Oops. And there's a card floating around. I hope everyone followed my instructions. We will get that card to you. But this is just a tiny